the timeless story of New York City. When you think of New York City, maybe you imagine tall glass towers, yellow taxis, and the never-ending noise of people rushing somewhere. But the story of New York is much deeper than that. It's a story that began hundreds of years ago, long before skyscrapers and bright lights. It began with nature, quiet rivers, and people living close to the land. The land before the city. Long before it was called New York, this land was home to the Lenape people. They lived along the rivers, hunting, fishing, and farming. The place we now call Manhattan was covered in forests and meadows. Wild animals roamed freely, bears, deer, even wolves. The Lenape called the island Mannahatta, which means Island of Many Hills. Imagine that for a second. Instead of honking cars and crowded streets, picture rolling green hills, streams of clear water, and small wooden canoes gliding across the Hudson River. Life was simple, peaceful, and deeply connected to nature. The first settlers. Everything changed in the early 1600s when European explorers arrived. In 1609, Henry Hudson, an Englishman sailing for the Dutch, entered the harbor. He sailed up the river that would later carry his name, the Hudson River. His reports about the area fascinated the Dutch, and soon they decided to build a trading post there. By 1624, Dutch settlers arrived and established a small colony called New Amsterdam. They traded fur with the Native Americans. Animal skins like beaver pelts were extremely valuable in Europe. This small trading post grew quickly, and the Dutch built homes, warehouses, and even a wooden wall to protect their town from attacks. That wall stood roughly where Wall Street is today, the heart of the world's finance industry. Funny how names stay even after everything else changes. Becoming New York. In 1664, the English decided they wanted control of the colony. They sent ships, and the Dutch, outnumbered, surrendered without a fight. The English renamed the city New York after the Duke of York. From that moment, New York started to evolve. It became a mixture of cultures, ideas, and ambitions. Dutch, English, Africans, and other Europeans lived together. It wasn't always peaceful, but it was alive, buzzing with trade, opportunity, and energy. The city of freedom and struggle. In the 1700s, New York was already a busy port. Ships from around the world came and went, carrying goods, people, and stories. But this was also a time of tension. The American colonies were growing restless under British rule. New York became one of the key places where revolution brewed. When the American Revolution began in 1775, New York played a major role. George Washington and his troops fought fierce battles around the city. Eventually, though, the British took control of New York and held it until the end of the war. In 1783, when peace was declared, Washington returned triumphantly to the city. People lined the streets cheering as the American flag once again waved over New York.
After independence, New York grew quickly. In 1789, George Washington was even inaugurated as the first president of the United States in New York City at Federal Hall. For a brief time, it was the nation's capital. A city of immigrants. The 1800s brought massive change. Ships began to arrive carrying thousands of immigrants from all over the world: Ireland, Italy, Germany, China, and many other places. People came with dreams of a better life. They saw New York as the gateway to opportunity. In the 1880s, a new symbol welcomed them: the Statue of Liberty. Standing tall in the harbor, she held her torch high as a beacon of hope. Just nearby, Ellis Island became the main immigration station. Between 1892 and 1954, more than 12 million immigrants passed through there. You can still imagine the emotions, the fear, excitement, and wonder as they stepped onto American soil for the first time. These immigrants built the city, literally. They laid bricks, dug tunnels, constructed railways, and raised the skyscrapers that would later define New York's skyline. Neighborhoods formed around different communities: Little Italy, Chinatown, Harlem. Each group brought its own culture, food, and language. That's why today New York feels like the whole world squeezed into one city. The rise of the modern city. By the late 1800s, New York had become one of the biggest and busiest cities in the world. The Brooklyn Bridge opened in 1883, linking Manhattan and Brooklyn, a true engineering marvel for its time. Around the same time, something else started to rise: skyscrapers. The city's limited land and booming population pushed builders to think upward. The Flatiron Building, built in 1902, was one of the first to capture people's imagination. Then came giants like the Chrysler Building and the Empire State Building, which for many years was the tallest building in the world. Down below, the subway system began operating in 1904. It was revolutionary. Trains that ran underground, connecting people across boroughs. For the first time, someone living in the Bronx could easily reach Brooklyn or Queens. The subway became New York's heartbeat, pulsing day and night. The Roaring '20s and Hard Times. The 1920s were glamorous. Jazz filled the air, dance halls were packed, and Times Square glowed with electric lights. Harlem became the center of black culture and creativity, a period known as the Harlem Renaissance. Writers like Langston Hughes and musicians like Duke Ellington brought new life and pride to African American art. But the good times didn't last. The Great Depression hit in 1929, and the city suffered deeply. Banks closed, people lost jobs, and lines for food stretched down the blocks. Still, even in those dark times, New Yorkers didn't lose hope. Massive public works projects were launched, and soon the city began to rebuild. World War II and beyond. During World War II, New York became a hub of industry and communication. Soldiers shipped out from its ports, and news from around the world flowed through its newspapers and radio stations. After the war, the city changed again. Soldiers returned home, families grew, and the skyline reached new heights. In 1951, the United Nations built its headquarters in Manhattan, turning New York into a global capital, a place where the world came together to solve its problems. The challenges of a great city. The 1960s and 70s weren't easy. New York faced crime, poverty, and financial troubles. Some neighborhoods were unsafe, and the city's image suffered. Yet through art, activism, and music, a new kind of energy was born. This was the era of punk, hip-hop, and street art. The Bronx gave birth to rap. Brooklyn turned graffiti into storytelling, and the city's rough edges became part of its charm. Then came the 1980s. Wall Street boomed again. The yuppie culture, money, and luxury filled downtown. By the 1990s, New York was cleaner, safer, and becoming one of the world's most desirable cities once more. Then came a day no one will ever forget. On September 11, 2001, terrorists hijacked planes and crashed them into the World Trade Center towers. The Twin Towers collapsed, killing nearly 3,000 people. The city and the world stood still. But even in tragedy, New York showed its greatest strength: unity. Firefighters, police, and doctors, and ordinary people risked their lives to help others. The city grieved together, healed together, and slowly began to rebuild. Today, the One World Trade Center, also known as the Freedom Tower, stands tall where the Twin Towers once were, a symbol of resilience. Now, when you look at New York City, you see 5 boroughs: Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island. Each has its own flavor. Manhattan is the heart, home to Central Park, Times Square, and the financial district. Brooklyn is creative and cultural, filled with art, music, and food from all over the world. Queens is the most diverse place in America, with hundreds of languages spoken. The Bronx has deep musical roots, the birthplace of hip-hop, and Staten Island offers quiet neighborhoods and ocean views. Over 8 million people live here. Every day, more millions come to work, visit, or chase their dreams. The subway still runs 24 hours a day. The lights at Times Square never go out. Street vendors still shout out for business, and artists still paint, sing, and perform on sidewalks. The energy never fades. A city of dreams. People come to New York for different reasons. To act, to study, to work, to start over. Some make it big, others struggle, but everyone becomes part of the city's rhythm. There's a saying, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And maybe that's true, because New York isn't just a place, it's an idea. It's the idea that no matter who you are, where you come from, you can belong. You can try, fail, and try again. It's a city built by dreamers, workers, and survivors. New York at night. At night, the city changes. The noise softens a little. The lights glow warmer, and the wind carries the faint sounds of music from bars and apartments. From the top of the Empire State Building, you can see the whole city, a sea of twinkling lights stretching endlessly. Central Park becomes a dark green heart surrounded by brightness. The bridges shimmer like threads of gold. And if you stand quietly by the river, you can still feel something ancient. The same breeze that blew over the island when the Lenape lived here. The same spirit that had survived wars, fires, and heartbreak. New York never sleeps, but it also never stops dreaming. The spirit of the city. What makes New York special isn't just its buildings or its history, it's the people. The street performers in the subway, the food vendors on corners, the artists painting murals, the office workers rushing to catch trains, the immigrants still arriving with suitcases and hopes. It's a city that welcomes everyone and challenges everyone, too. It's tough, noisy, and sometimes overwhelming, but it's also full of life, color, and stories waiting to be told. Every street has a memory. Every corner has a past. You can walk down Broadway and realize that millions of footsteps have been there before you. So do sailors, immigrants, lovers, dreamers, all left one little mark on the same pavement. Closing thoughts. New York City has been many things. A trading post, a colony, a battlefield, a melting pot, a dream factory. It has burned, rebuilt, struggled, and risen again and again. Today it stands as one of the greatest cities on earth, not because it's perfect, but because it's alive, always changing, always growing, always moving forward. When the sun rises over the East River and the first light hits the glass towers, you can almost hear the city take a breath, ready for another day, another story, another dream. That's New York City. A city of endless stories, standing proudly on an island of many hills, just like it began.